Hello, everybody, and welcome back. We are doing part 3 of our series, Adulting. And so, welcome back if you're in your life groups or any small group environment. And we'd like to have a conversation today and spark some conversation in your group around the series Adulting. And today's theme is the marketplace. And just to recap a little bit, Peter encourages the church in a time of persecution to not allow the persecution to create anger and bitterness in them, but to actually see the potential in the persecution to for them to grow up and to mature spiritually. So today I have got Sarah with me. Welcome, Sarah. It's so good to have you.
It's good to be here.
Sarah is you're pretty new in the marketplace, aren't you?
Yeah, so I've had a couple part-time jobs, but I'm finishing my studies this year, so I haven't officially stepped into the place where I'm the sole person responsible for tasks and having to answer to a boss and things like that. So yeah.
But you are getting used to the workplace environment. And then, of course, Shungu, you've got lots of years in the marketplace. So you've got some experience. In fact, you are in a space where you are in a managerial space, and so we're going to talk about that a little bit today as well. So let me kick off by asking you, the two of you, have you ever felt persecuted on some level in the workplace?
Yes, definitely.
No?
Yes.
Talk to me about it.
Well, I found myself in an environment of where there is ethnical difference.
Yeah.
And there was some tension.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And navigating that required for me to rely a lot on what God expects from me at work. Yeah.
Okay. And kind of what was your knee-jerk reaction to that, sort of initially at least?
There was some serious irritation.
Come on, be honest.
Some serious irritation. Some desire to retaliate.
All right. And you, Sarah?
Yeah, a while ago, I was quite new to a part-time job, and I was still in the process of being trained how to do things, and I was given the opportunity to kind of ring up for a customer, and I didn't know how to do something, and so I asked my manager to show me, and they said, no, you should already know this, and I made a mistake, and they got really cross with me and shouted at me in front of the customer and everyone, and it was a really difficult thing because I didn't know how to do it, and I'd tried to ask, but obviously I hadn't communicated well enough that I really didn't know how to do it, and so yeah, it was hurtful. And I think I had to, it was just a really difficult thing to just navigate in that moment, trying to handle my emotions, to still respect this person because they were in authority over me, even though they were treating me in a way that I felt was really unfair.
And did you feel so that the sort of persecution element of that, Shungu mentioned it was for her, it was an ethnical dynamic. What was it for you? Was it also ethnical or was it generational?
I would say generational, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Somebody from an older generation who felt persecuted by an older generation for your age.
Yes, that's exactly what it was.
Okay. All right. Well, Peter, we have to go back to Peter because that is what this whole series is set around. Peter's letter to the church. And he has some interesting words that he wrote to the church, specifically focused on the marketplace. So I'm going to ask you to read that in a minute.
Sure.
It's just a few verses, but in order to make the context a little bit more 21st century, we have removed or replaced the word slaves with employees and masters with employers.
Yeah.
All right, so go ahead and read it for us.
So in 1 Peter 2, verse 18 to 19, it says, you who are employees must submit to your employers with all respect. Do what they tell you, not only if they are kind and reasonable, but even if they are cruel. For God is pleased when, conscious of his will, you are patiently endure unjust treatment.
Wow, that's quite a That's almost, you know what, if we had to translate that into modern day, actually what he's telling the church, get over yourself.
Yeah.
Yep.
Get over your entitlement. Get over your issues.
Yeah, it's not about you.
It's not about you. It's about you being a testimony for God's glory. And so in essence, what he's saying is, I know you want to resign tomorrow, but have you considered that it's actually God's will for you to be in that place because he's using that environment to mold the character of Christ in you? And of course, there's I don't think we must hear what Peter's not saying. He's not talking about outright abuse.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That is, you know, where you have to dislodge from that scenario or that place because you could actually get physically hurt or whatever. He's saying, you're just irritated. You're actually offended because you've got some pride issues and what have you. And God actually wants to deal with that. And so you cannot resign. So in the light of that, you've been in the marketplace a lot longer than Sarah. Have you seen in your time this trend where resignations are becoming more and more and more common because people just can't grow up in their workplaces?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. There's like a high staff turnover because people are refusing to take responsibility and would rather throw in the towel and just go on to the next.
Yes. Yeah. And so actually what Peter's saying is, it's not actually God's will that you're always happy.
Yeah.
He's not so much concerned about our happiness and our comfort as what he is about our holiness and the character of Christ being formed in us. Maybe what we're talking about right now is something we must all think about. Maybe you're watching and listening to this and thinking to yourself, well, that's exactly why I'm wanting to resign, because I don't like my boss, I don't like the people. It's not so much the work, although it might be. Sometimes we're lazy and we don't want too much work. We want all the money, but we don't want to do the work. And so it's maybe the challenge to accept the fact that the reason why I actually want to move away is very selfish, and I actually need to allow the space to change me and transform me. In fact, Paul wrote to the Colossians, and he had something to say about this as well. Do you want to read that for us, Shungu?
Yes, I do. Colossians is actually one of my favorite books. Slaves, in this case, employees, obey your earthly employers in everything you do. Try to please them all the time, not just when they are watching you. Serve them sincerely because of your reverent fear of the Lord.
Sure.
Work willingly at whatever you do as though you were working for the Lord rather than for people.
Yeah. Wow, it's quite a paradigm shift, isn't it?
Like,
So now this is very interesting what Paul says here, and it makes me think of this whole concept of the managerial system within the workplace. And truth is, and you know this, you've been in those spaces, managers is something almost new in human history in the workplace, because the culture moved from a place of diligence and expectation to a place of shortcuts. And so you need to put this management system in place to make sure that workers actually do what they're supposed to do. How have you experienced that?
that is one of my pet peeves. I mean, I'm a manager, and we're talking about adulting, right? There is this immaturity that seems to creep in where now I need to come and check whether you have done your work, whether you have done it properly or on time. I exist to see whether you are actually doing what you are employed to do. I think there needs to be a level of maturity that comes back into the workplace where you don't need to be followed up on, and you go and do what you were employed to do, and you do it with excellence and diligence and passion to the extent that you go over and above. And what I expect, I actually end up getting more out of you.
That's right.
Work as if we are working for God.
Yes.
That's what Paul says in Colossians.
Yeah. Who's watching all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Where a manager does not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, Sarah, are you encouraged as you step into workspaces that there is space for integrity to grow and for maturity to happen? Do you, or in the short while that you've been in the marketplace, have you had some good examples of people who have been there longer than you, older than you, modeling that maturity, or are you disappointed?
I think there have been some good examples. Someone I would refer to is actually my dad. Currently, he is someone who works from home, but he's still intentional to get up every day and go and sit at his desk and work. No one else is monitoring that. He could easily say he's working and just, be having coffee, go out for coffees, but he's very intentional to get up and go and sit at his desk and work. So I would say that's a good integrity space where I've seen someone who's intentional to work with excellence regardless of who is watching. But at the same token, it's been a very weird transition for me, I would say, stepping into this space where I need to be accountable for my actions. Yes, I've gone to varsity and it is a bit different. You don't have a teacher following up with you. The lecturer says, do your own work. But it's very different when suddenly you're being paid to do a job. There are expectations for you to follow through on something. And sometimes you come in with more confidence then you realize you actually have the skills or ability for something. Yes. And that is overwhelming sometimes, I'll be honest. And so it's easy to feel like you don't want to do certain things because maybe you're overwhelmed, maybe you don't know how to voice that to someone. But it's important to still step into a space where you are accountable for it, and own up for those things and work with integrity, even if you are feeling like you don't actually know as much as you thought, which is a weird space to be in, but it's a good growing point, I think.
Great. Well, I think in our discussion, we've kind of moved from the idea of being persecuted in the marketplace to the idea of developing integrity and becoming mature in your attitude towards the marketplace and the people we work with in those spaces. And that's actually, in our minds, we separate the two. No, hang on. Persecution is one thing and my integrity in the marketplace. Yeah. But actually what Peter is saying, hang on, have you thought that the two are actually connected?
Yeah.
That we should recognize the spaces of persecution as just human nature.
Yeah.
And God saying, if I empower you, will you be my disciple? Will you be the light? Will you be my testimony? By not trying to run away from it, but enduring it for the sake of your testimony, of God's goodness. And actually allowing the workspace to see the light of Christ as we just go about our everyday lives and so on. So I want to leave you with 3 questions for your discussion group as you talk about it right now. And here's the first one. Question number 1. What does persecution in the workplace, in the marketplace look like for you? So talk about that. And question number 2. Why would God want us to stay in an environment we are not happy in? We've been talking about that. Maybe discuss that in your own context in the world that you're living in. And question number 3, what would be the exception to this? In other words, from a biblical perspective, let's just clarify what it looks like when it's not a godly place to be, when it's really not God's will, and where we need to disengage for the sake of morality or ethics or whatever that is. All right. Well, thank you. And I hope you enjoy your discussions. Until next time.